One national college football analyst is projecting LSU to the college football playoff. We'll explore the path. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, so please subscribe, of course, on YouTube as well. So one national college football analyst is projecting LSU to the college football playoff. We will look at LSU's college football playoff odds from our friends over at FanDuel. And if there is a path, where still does and can LSU improve between now and the end of the season? We'll do all of that on today's episode. But let me not waste any time. Joel Klatt of Fox Sports is the one who we're talking about. And on his show, the Joel Klatt Show, he was asked to project the college football playoff. And while he looked at a handful of bubble teams, one of the teams that he projected to be in the playoff, your Fighting Tigers of LSU. Here is the explanation why.
Death Valley. I expect them to beat A&M on the road, beat Oklahoma at home, and lose to Alabama. So for me, LSU is a 10-2 team, 7-1 in the SEC. 7-1 in the SEC, to me, gets you in. USC, even if they lose to Penn State next week, even if they lose to Penn State, then they can run the table. They can essentially have a play-in game against Notre Dame that final week of the season. If they win that, they'll be coming off a nice little win streak. And then you've got this LSU team that's 10-2, 7-1 in SEC play, and USC, and they're both sitting there. Well, guess who gets one spot and the other spot? USC and LSU, because USC beat LSU. LSU would be going 7-1 in SEC play. They're going, but you have to put USC in that position because they beat LSU the opening week of the season. So in this scenario, SC plays Georgia at the 10 seed and LSU goes at the 11 seed and would play Oregon. That's how I got there.
What do you think about that? LSU 10-2 overall, 7-1 in the SEC, beating Ole Miss a week from Saturday in Tiger Stadium, running the table with the exception of being the loss to Alabama in Tiger Stadium, and finishing 10-2, 7-1 in the SEC. Now, there is a caveat. So Joel Klatt, before he talked about LSU, talked about Missouri and said he thinks Missouri loses 2 games, but Missouri's schedule isn't strong enough to get them in. And that's one of the points that I've made for a long time about this college football playoff, because even dating back to when we were at the SEC football media days in Dallas this summer, overwhelmingly, one of the things that I love to do when I go to media days is listen. You exist at media days in this bubble. It's a 4-day, 5-day if you count Sunday when everybody gets there, SEC football bubble, and you're just entrapped in this bubble for 4 days. And it's just this echo chamber with people repeating and reciting the same talking points and storylines and everything and asking the same questions and answering the same stuff over and over and over. And so I love to ask like a singular question to everybody to see what type of variety I get. And I ask people over and over again all summer at SEC Media Days, hey, how many teams do you think the SEC gets in? And overwhelmingly, it was minimum 4, probably 5 or 6. And the general consensus was, hey, you get a 10-2 SEC team, they're in. And I kept pushing back against that, saying, look, we talked about it earlier this week on the pod, if you were here. In the last 10 years of the college football playoff, if you start from 2014 to now, a decade of the 4-team college football playoff, if you look at how many SEC teams, how many years, like how many SEC teams would have been in that given year in a 12-team playoff, if say, for example, from 2014 to now, a 4-team playoff. If the same criteria, everything were as is, but instead of 4, it was the top 12. Now, it would really be top 11 because a G5 is getting a spot. How many SEC teams would be in? Only 3 times in that decade would there have been 4. Overwhelmingly, it was 3 teams, and actually twice, it was just 1. In 2015 and 2016, it would have been 1 team, Alabama, by the way. So I think our perception of, 10-2, you're in, isn't exactly reality. Joel Klatt is right. If you have a bad week, if you have a weak schedule and you're sitting there at 10-2, that's no guarantee that you're in just because you're in the SEC. Missouri's strength of schedule is the worst in the conference. It's why a lot of people liked Missouri to be a playoff team before the season started. They went and beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl a year ago. They returned Brady Cook. They returned Luther Bird. A lot of people thought, oh, look, they're just going to keep on trucking along. And against that schedule, they should be in because they'll go 10-2. Maybe not necessarily. But LSU's 10-2, as Joel Klatt laid it out there, actually would probably get them there. You would have a quote-unquote good loss against a playoff team in USC in the season opener, something you can overcome. I'll remind you that in the first year of the 4-team college football playoff, Ohio State opened its season with a home loss against Virginia Tech. That Virginia Tech team finished 6-6. That was not a good Virginia Tech team. That was a bad loss. But Ohio State ran the table. They beat Wisconsin 59-0 in the Big Ten championship game, got into the playoff as the 4 seed, ended up winning it. They beat Bama in the Sugar Bowl, and then beat Oregon in the national championship game. So there is a path to overcome a good loss. There wasn't a 4-team playoff. There certainly is a path to overcome a good loss in a 12-team playoff. So if, as Klatt said, you lose to SC and then a home game to Bama, you can overcome that. Now, I have some reservations. I do think LSU can beat Ole Miss. I'm not dramatically projecting it. We'll see how this game goes, and we have the luxury of sitting back and watching Ole Miss play South Carolina this week, and I think that will be very, very telling for what that may look like. What if Ole Miss goes and gets beat up again and really struggles at the line of scrimmage to protect Jackson Dart? I mean, LSU's ends could cause a real problem. What if Ole Miss finds itself and goes and blows out South Carolina, a place where LSU really struggled? We'll get there. But if LSU beats Ole Miss, I'll tell you, man, like I have real reservations about road trips to Arkansas and Texas A&M. That especially A&M, that's 3 consecutive road games, back-to-back road conference games. I've said that for a while now. But I also think it's certainly plausible LSU could beat Alabama. And before you hem and haw and roll your eyes at that, I want to remind you of something. 2 years ago, LSU opened up the season with a ugly loss in the Superdome against Florida State. We can all look and say, yeah, well, they missed a PAT. They did. They had a PAT blocked at the end. But if you remember that game, that was a horribly played football game. LSU's offensive line was a sieve. You muffed 2 punts. You had an errant snap at the goal line when you're going in on the first possession of the season. I mean, it was a horribly played football game. And then LSU got run out of Tiger Stadium at 11 o'clock in the morning by Tennessee. Before the calendar even flipped to October, you had 2 losses. Wasn't nobody thinking that team was going to be anything, especially how thoroughly and soundly they got beaten by Tennessee on that day. And what happened? They kept getting better. And they beat Alabama. And they won the SEC West. And they won 10 games. Because as I always say, teams are allowed to improve. So how much better can this team be over the next month? I do want to talk about that here in just a quick second, but let me first run through our friends over at FanDuel have updated the college football playoff odds. Again, this isn't to win the national championship. It's just to make the playoff. These are the SEC teams. Bama minus 1,200. Texas minus 800. Tennessee minus 310. Georgia minus 300. Ole Miss plus 110. Missouri plus 125, Texas A&M plus 340, LSU plus 350. So LSU is actually 18th, but 8th among SEC teams. So the odds makers right now do not agree with Joel Klatt. They do not think LSU is going to go 10-2, 7-1 in the conference. They think LSU is going to have more losses hung on them. But I will say, this weekend, there will be a dramatic shakeup. Either Texas A&M or Missouri is going to lose, and their odds will drop below LSU's. If South Carolina beats Ole Miss will be a 2-loss team, and they are effectively eliminated. And along those lines, the Tigers can keep climbing. Now, Tennessee has a tricky spot as well. On the road against Arkansas in Fayetteville. Now, Arkansas hadn't beaten a top 25 team at home in Arkansas has not beaten a top 5 team at home in 25 years. That happened to be Tennessee. Now number 3 Tennessee goes to Fayetteville, and Sam Pittman has been really good as an underdog, at least against the spread. He'd be looking to pull an outright upset. I don't know if he could do it, but my point is there's going to be a lot of movement still as we're just getting into October. Now, I do want to talk about where LSU can still improve in this open date and moving forward. We're going to delve into all that as we continue Locked On LSU, your team every day. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. If you love attending any live sporting event, be it college football, the NFL, shows, plays, music, theater, comedy, you can all find your tickets at Game Time. I love the Game Time app. In my opinion, the most user-friendly ticketing app and platform that I've ever seen. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. I love the Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I love the all-in pricing. You toggle that feature, it'll show you the exact price, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. You know exactly the price you are paying. So all-in pricing, you have to turn on that feature. By the way, you have to turn on that feature when you toggle it. But I love that feature. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It is just, they think of everything. It's Game Time. So here's what you do. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So if LSU is going to get to the point where they make the college football playoff, they have to improve. But I would like to submit this to you. Even from where this season began, and LSU right now is one of college football's best offenses. They're averaging 35.2 points per game and 468 yards per game. Garrett Nussmeier is second in completions. He's third in touchdowns. He's fourth in passing yards. He's been outstanding. But I would like to even submit this to you. He has done all of that in an offense that currently ranks 99th in the country in rushing offense. Caden Durham's emergence certainly adds another layer, another dimension to the LSU offense. And you're going to get Chris Hilton back against Ole Miss, which gives you your true vertical deep threat, another opportunity to stretch a defense. And y'all, Chris Hilton isn't just someone we've talked about in hopes that he can be good. This is a guy throughout his career that has averaged nearly 19 yards per reception throughout his career. He was very good in fall camp last year. He just happened to be behind Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Kyron Lacey. He was just buried on a depth chart. And he was doing fantastic this year in fall camp before he was injured in that final Saturday practice of fall camp. So yes, I do believe that adds an even deeper layer to this offense when Chris Hilton comes back. So your offense is improving. The real question, though, if we're being honest, is how much better can this LSU defense be? And while you have lost two significant players in Jacobian Guillory and Harold Perkins, and I am not going to undersell them. I know there's some fans that try. Jacobian Guillory is your most veteran interior defensive lineman, and that's a position where, by Brian Kelly's own admission, LSU was weak and was trying to attack in the portal and failed. And at linebacker, you could say what you want about Harold Perkins being out of place. The bottom line is, no matter what the stat sheet says, every time an offense breaks the huddle, they had to account for number 7. You had to know where he was, and that tilted the field. Losing him is not an advantage. However, I think LSU's edges are a problem. Savion Jones, Braden Swinson, Deshaun Womack, Gabe Relaford. LSU has been good, one of the most disruptive teams in college football. And on the interior, Gio Paez has been solid. Ahmad Bro's emergence as a freshman has been so encouraging. He's only going to get better. It reminds me a lot of Devon Gotcha when he was forced to play as a true freshman on the interior and just kept getting better and became a guy who's a decade-long NFL starter. Dominic McKinley has been disruptive in his limited snaps. We're seeing JVR Suggs start to get more reps. Against UCLA, 8 snaps, 4 pressures. He may not be a 20, 30 snap guy, but if he gives you 8 to 11 high-effort snaps where he can push the pocket, create pressure, now all of a sudden you may not have the All-American in the middle, but you have fresh legs and bodies you trust that can go give you reps. That's including guys like Sean Washington and Jalen Lee when you get him back healthy. As far as linebacker goes, there may not be another game where you're going to show that Buffalo front, the true 4-3, just because of the style of offenses you play. But Whit Weeks is coming to his own. Greg Penn is a tackling machine, and you're going to get West Weeks back healthy as well. They tried to play West Weeks against South Alabama. He played just 4 snaps, took himself out as he was still battling that foot injury. You got to believe he's going to be good to go against Ole Miss. At cornerback, Zy Alexander and Ashton Stamps, they're not going to be All-Americans. It's not going to remind you of Derek Stingley and Christian Fulton. But they are serviceable SEC cornerbacks with those 2 as your starters, with P.J. Woodland rotating in as your 3. And then when you look at safety, you have been weak there. There's no doubt. But Jordan Gilbert's played a lot of football. You could move Major Burns back to safety, or maybe you leave Sage Ryan back there. Maybe Jordan Gilbert, Sage Ryan become your starting safety tandem, and you have 2 veteran guys back there with the possibility of putting Major Burns or rotating a couple of younger guys in there. Jordan Allen, Deshaun Spears, who started the last 3 games, and has tremendous upside. How much better did those guys continue to get as the season goes along? As we always say, teams are allowed to improve. And that's something we've continued to see. And it's something we saw the last 2 years under Brian Kelly. Teams that in November didn't even closely resemble what they were in September. The question is, in the immediacy, what can you do against Ole Miss? Because if you care to go back and listen to any of our preseason shows where we talked about projections, the most important game, or anything like that, I was very consistent. I felt the Ole Miss game was the most important game for LSU because it was going to provide an absolute pendulum swinging moment on the season for LSU. And here we are. Tigers through 5 games are 4-1. If they beat Ole Miss, you're 5-1 at the halfway point. If you go 5-1 in the second half, you're 10-2, and you're exactly what Joel Klatt said. 10-2, 7-1 in the league, and you're a playoff team. Lose to Ole Miss, and you have left yourself no margin for error. Even one more loss after Ole Miss, your playoff hopes are dashed. You are at best a 9-3 football team, probably back in a Gator Bowl or a ReliaQuest Bowl, hoping to get to 10 wins with a bowl game and wondering what your future is going to be like when you probably lose your entire offense, and you're hoping that your defense starts to improve. The real question is, over the first month of this season, how much has your defense improved? We're going to find out a week from Saturday when Ole Miss comes in, and it'll go a long way to proving Joel Klatt either right or wrong about his projection. We'll be here for you every single day. All right, it is Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And please be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.